Hi everyone, we're going to go ahead and get started. I would love it if in the group chat you took a minute to let everybody know a little bit about yourself, maybe introducing yourself, what school you're at, what you do, and go ahead and get started. We'll get started here in about a minute. So I'm going to go ahead and get started as you all introduce yourselves. Hi, Yulia, Colorado Mountain College. I'm not sure what location. I'm thinking that might be up near Glenwood Springs. But I'm going to go ahead and get started. And we're going to work our way through a pretty interesting presentation, I think, webinar today on engaging students in online conversation. So let me see if I can go ahead and move us through. So just a little bit about our story as far as EDU. One of the things that we're really excited to do is to provide not just that another thing for us to do as far as professional development, but that community of practice that we know is really helpful as far as professional development. Another piece that's I think exciting is just that personalized approach that each one of us needs to be able to meet our goals and also to meet the needs of our students and staff. EDU is also a wonderful place for that just-in-time training as you're seeing today and experiencing today. But then also there are so many interests in our field that EDU has the privilege to support those interests as we move forward and grow our business, our organization. Some of the different things that we offer, as you can see, the webinar that we're doing today, we will be recording that as well. I'm so glad that you can participate with that with us in that live, as well as we offer different learning modules, and I'm learning as I go with EDU as far as the professional development learning modules. I'm excited to work on one this summer. Hopefully it'll be something that will be related to supporting teacher librarians as they start to develop their collection. The other thing that we're offering are book studies and different coaching services. And I know that you'll be reading more and more about the different kinds of professional development that we're going to be offering in the future. There is a webinar special that you can purchase as far as hour-long web-based webinars, and there'll be more information coming on the website, and you'll hear more about that from Laura Summers. But these are just a couple of the hour-long webinar specials that are available to you as well. There's a link here to the website that will tell you a little bit more about the membership options. And right now there is a webinar special that is running, and Laura can give you more information on that, but it's now through May, and it's $60, and I'm sure that there'll be more on that website that can support you with that information, as well as contacting Laura. Laura's contact information. And we're going to jump pretty much right into the webinar from here. I'm going to just open up the chat, and it looks like we have Holly joining us today. She said she's not currently at a school. She's a stay-home mom, and that's a wonderful time in our lives. I was able to do that for about 7 years. But Holly used to be in Jeffco and did the I remember Holly. Nice. And Yulia, you're in Dillon. Nice, nice. Well, I'm going to be monitoring lots of things at the same time. This is my first time of monitoring a lot of windows, so thanks for your patience, and hopefully this is going to be a beneficial experience for all of us today. So engaging students in online conversation. I'm going to work through our slides a little bit today to give you just a little bit of an idea of some resources, just some different options that we have for strategies for online conversation, and then as well, just some instructional practices. I've really focused on balancing this with primary as well as secondary resources, so I hope that those needs will be met for you today. And then this slide obviously talks about the instructional connections that we're going to hopefully make in our group today. There'll be some time for chat, some time for questions, and hopefully you'll walk away with some good resources that you can use for online conversation in your school and your resources as well. So I'd love to just kind of get a feel for where everybody's coming from. And I'm hoping that with the chat feature that we've been using, maybe just sharing some of your experiences or your thoughts about using online conversation. Maybe you've done some of that, excuse me, in your school. Maybe you've participated. I know, Holly, I know you've participated with online conversation in a discussion feature, but what are some experiences that you've had or some thoughts that you have about online conversation? I'm going to go ahead and give us all a chance to just talk about what we've experienced or thought about as far as our online conversations. So if you want to go ahead and type in that group chat box, that'll give us an idea of where everybody's at, and I'll just wait a couple more minutes. If your experiences have been on a discussion board, maybe they've been in an online learning environment already. In Jeffco, what we've used is Schoology. We've also used Blackboard. So those are two places that I initially met with teachers virtually. Then when I was in the master's program at CU Denver, we used online conversation there as well. Any other experiences with online conversations, either in school with students or as a student yourself? So Holly, using those, yes, at UCD, we did, and then staff development with online opportunities. That makes sense too, online conversation there. And okay, so you're using Canvas, and I'm hoping I'm pronouncing your name correctly. I have a student at Arvada West, and she pronounces her name Yulia. So online and hybrid. Nice. Yay, thank you. Well, Angie, yes, you've seen this work really well when there are expectations and goals set up ahead of time. And Angie, have you used this with students as well? That's the one thing that we're going to talk about today is opportunities to use online conversation with students. And yes, you have on Schoology. We're going to talk a little bit about learning management systems such as Canvas. And last summer was my first experience, Yulia, with Canvas, and I really liked it. Very, very user-friendly. So I'm going to go ahead and move forward. So one of the things that I think is real important is that when we're talking with our staff, when we're working with students, that we really understand a little bit behind the benefits as far as what research says. And this next slide represents a little bit of research. I put the web address here, and you'll all have access to that as well after this session. To this Google presentation, and it'll all have all the links will be there as well. But one of the things that I've really found is that when you're talking about the benefits of online conversation, especially to teachers, that they see this research as validating the opportunity that you want to include this in the collaboration that you're doing with them or with their students. So teachers really do appreciate the research behind it. They also appreciate that this information, as far as online conversation, can be shared as a part of their evaluation, because this is sometimes for some of them something that they want to use around their instruction, but they're really not quite sure that they can do this independently. And so when they know that you as the teacher librarian have taken the time to do this research, for them, it does help them to feel more comfortable in the process. So with online conversation, obviously a huge benefit is the increase of the students having that opportunity for critical thinking skills. The other component that I think, and I've seen this personally, I'm sure you have too, if you've used this with students, is their increased participation. I have some examples that we're going to dive into in a little bit. The source of the class community, I saw this when I actually got into the discussions that the students were using. They were very respectful. We modeled that like Angie was talking about initially. But the other thing is that when we were looking for their conversation, they started to actually cite their sources. They were embedded citations, but they also started to speak with more authority in the online conversation because they had done their homework. They were ready for their participation in this. I used Google Blogger, but they were ready for that. They had done their homework and they were ready before they posted with that information. The less question time for the teacher, I can see that the teachers use their time differently in asking students questions during their online conversation. The research that I found, and I'm interested in this, is that greater sense of equity, the race and gender. I haven't really experienced that, so I'm looking forward to, I'm going to be doing this again with classes in April, just seeing how that piece of the research as far as a benefit plays out. I think that's going to be one of my focus points personally as the teacher librarian, is I really want to understand that more. But then the students and their technology literacy. I saw kids who had never used Blogger before, but understood the connection between social media and the benefits of conversation and the enjoyment of conversation there. As far as the connection, there was a lot of reflection, and you'll see that in some of the upcoming slides that I'll talk about today. The fluidity of the conversation, sometimes, and this last year was my very first time in working with students on this as far as in my school, but I saw the flow, it depended on the student and who and what they had done as far as their homework and preparation for working online. There were a lot of students who I think appreciated, and you'll see this in some of their posts, the time for reflection. And then I think they enjoyed just the new environment that online conversation presented it, as itself in the classroom itself versus the classroom itself. I think they were a little more relaxed. They knew they had some time to do the posts. And for those of us who've had online experiences and online conversation experiences in our courses that we've taken at a university level, for them it was so novel. For us, we've experienced it before, but I really saw, and you'll see, just the learning that was demonstrated in the classes that I taught this last year. What was huge, I think, for me was for teachers that were trying this out for the very first time with their students, their level of comfort with the actual tool or the platform itself. They trusted a lot that I had the skill set in Blogger to set this up for them, for their kids, because this was something that was new for them. If they were users of Facebook, if they'd had an online experience where they were using a discussion board or a blog, they were a little more comfortable. There was one teacher who hadn't, so that was where I really wanted to make sure that I was thoughtful in that sense. One of the things we did a lot was model that professional etiquette, online etiquette for the students, and we really put in forth the expectations that this was part of the classroom in just an online format, but all those same kinds of respect and expectations maintained throughout the blogging experience as well. And then the teachers, we had some conversation about them and their content that they wanted me to enter into the blog to make sure that they entered that higher order thinking that they were really expressing to the students they were looking for in the blog posts themselves. So one of the things that I found was important to the teachers, especially as they were looking for support in their rubrics, in their evaluations, and I always encourage teachers through their collaborations to make sure that if they want to have my support for their evaluation, we make sure that these ISTE connections, regardless of if it's the evaluation or if it's the rubric or if it's the assignment sheet or expectations, that we put these ISTE connections out there for the students to see, for the teachers to see, for their evaluators to see. So I wanted to include the ones that we had highlighted in some of our collaborations using this type of presentation as far as online. I wanted them to make sure that they saw this and that you saw this today as well, because I really feel like this is validation for us, and it's also something that teachers really like to have in their evaluation, is that these standards were included and addressed as part of the collaboration. So I took a little bit of time to think about the different places at a secondary level that I could see blogging or online conversation connecting to the content that I use. So I wanted to make sure that you saw through the lens of secondary, at least, some of the places that I can actually jump right into for collaboration and say, these might be some great connections. And we're going to talk a little bit later about tools and the task that we're asking students to complete. And I just wanted to share with you today, and I'm going to be sharing this with my staff as well, just the ways that students can make some deeper connections in their content areas. So my challenge content area is social studies. And as far as when I say it's a challenge, there have been so many changes in the curriculum in our district that we've all kind of struggled to keep up with those. And so I wanted to highlight a couple of those for this department that I'm going to be meeting with tomorrow. But again, these are just some of the content areas that I felt were beneficial for you to see that blogging and online conversation really does connect. So this is a slide that one of our world language teachers who's on our tech team found. She was doing some searching, and Bill Ferreter, he is a teacher, he's a technology support person. He does a lot with professional development, and he talks a lot about why just the technology, the wrong answer, what do you want kids to do with it, all those wrong answers. But what I love is when you're talking about we want kids to start blogs with technology, I love the opposite side of this T-chart, the right answers. And by the way, he wants people to share this. So if you have a place that you think, oh my gosh, this is so great, I've put in the presentation a link to, in the notes to his website. But my thinking is, and I love this at the bottom, he talks about it's not just a tool, it's a tool, it's not a learning outcome. And these things on the right in this right-hand column, when I think about blogs, I see blogs working with all of these right answers. So I'd love to just have a little bit of time for you to just take a peek at the right answers. And there's no just right answers, but these were some of the research that he's done and the work that he's done with teachers. One of the things that I saw with the students when they were working on their blogs is that what this was it was increasing the conversation. It was raising the awareness for these students. They were starting to look for answers, and not just the right ones, but they had questions that they were searching out. It'll be interesting to see what year 2 and online conversation happens, what happens in these classes. To me, though, this is the real question, is why this tool, why Google Blogger, why the discussion board, why this tool with these students at this time? This is the tool, this is the question that I ask myself every time a teacher says, well, I want to use clickers. Well, I want to use Prezi. While I really want to use some sort of a survey tool. And it really is this question, and that's where I go when I'm asked in collaborations that they have to be evaluated and they have to use technology. So we talk about this question, and this really is where we started when we were talking about online conversation with the teachers that I'm going to represent in this presentation. So I want to give us a minute to, in the chat, give a little time for you to ask some questions, just some things that you might be wondering. And I'm going to check back and forth with the chat over the next few slides. But I'd really like you to utilize the chat today, the chat feature, specifically for you to ask some questions. So I'll try to monitor that, see how that is going throughout the next few slides. So don't hesitate to ask questions in the chat, and I'll open that up again in just a minute. So the first tool that I used for online conversation was Google Blogger, and I've put some hyperlinks, and again, you'll get this presentation. I'll make sure that you get this presentation. But I put in here just one of the reasons why I chose this, well, there were several actually, was that this was a safe, supported tool by my district. It's a good example of where kids are going to be able to use post-secondary. It kind of is that introduction for them as far as to a tool like Canvas, where there's a learning management system for discussions. And there's a lot of support that I could offer the students through Google Blogger. So the classes that you see there listed underneath, these were the different classes that I supported: anatomy and physiology. They were doing some endocrine research. I also used my book club when I was test driving it, just because I hadn't used Blogger yet. and then in this honors biology. And that was kind of the first place that the teacher came up to me and said, I want my students to have an opportunity to talk about their learning. And that's when we went to Google Blogger. Some of the hyperlinks that you see on the right, and you'll be able to open all of these when you have the presentation. This first one, a rating system, these were some teachers who used this. This was post-secondary, and they were talking about the blog being about 20% of the students' grade, and this was post-secondary. So this was, I'm thinking like a bachelor's level classes. This was what this group of teachers was thinking as far as their rating system. But these were several teachers who were just literally thinking aloud in this post about why they were having students use blogs in the first place. There's a quote that will come up a little bit later that you'll see that kind of made me think about why don't we use these kinds of tools more, and you'll see that in just a minute. The second link are some teachers' tips. These are very realistic tips. The first one was talk about just starting small with just one class of students or just one assignment. And then showing kids that these are blogs, being regular readers of blogs. Just again, that starting small. Let's read some blogs together. They talked about online safety and these teacher tips and having the students use pseudonyms instead of their real name. And they also talked about training students to be student editors, which is one of the things, again, I'm going to jump into this next time because I think that that's something else I want to learn a little bit more about. There's a couple of rubrics here. Rubric number 1, just a very general blogging rubric. And then the second rubric number 2, I actually Googled Google blogging rubric and came across a rubric that I felt was pretty good as well. And this being our first time around and first time through, I was new at this, but I'm one of those people that loves to just jump in. And so that's where I started. I don't see any questions on the chat at this point, so I'm just going to keep moving forward with some more resources. But again, feel free to jump into the chat with your questions, your comments. This is just a screenshot of the blog that I set up for the teachers. The directions, we wanted to make this super simple, kind of set some norms, tell them when some things were due. And each class basically had a different post that they responded to. And so they their guidelines were that they just needed to look for their class period, and the teachers would have them respond according to the appropriate class period. So the question on the left, this was the question that the nervous system, the teacher proposed for the prompt. And I just want to give you a minute to just read the student's response, read the question and the student's response. So I'm just going to give you a minute or so just to kind of scan through. And what you'll see, which I think is pretty cool, is just this was the first blush of this, and the learning that the students did, the sharing that they did, it was pretty impressive. So I'm just going to give you a minute to just read this. The teacher was in charge of all of the content as far as what she wanted to have the students respond to. And obviously teachers, librarians don't have to know everything about homeostasis and the disruption of caffeine to homeostasis. That's the teacher's role in that. But with just a little bit of modeling, the teacher and I just modeled some response to prompt. This is what the students put together. So it's pretty impressive. Just checking in with the chat to see if there are any questions. And I'm going to go on ahead to the next one. This was the same prompt and another student just addressing just the glamorization of Starbucks and according to Time Magazine. So you can see that they're starting to get the gist of what that means to cite their sources, embedded. Again, just their first go through on something like this was pretty impressive. The next slide demonstrates, this is a question that was in the anatomy and physiology, what happens when there's an imbalance of regulation. This is, I think they were talking about they had several different categories that they could, and I guess where I wanted to point you on this one was this first student who posted, I'm a little fuzzy on this as far as insulin imbalance. And what I love is that Kylie was comfortable enough in this environment to have, to ask a question, to say, I'm confused, somebody help me with this. And that's that discussion that I don't think is easily addressed in an open classroom forum where people can just look at each other like, what do you mean? I don't understand. They were really thoughtful. And this next student, Dana, just kind of jumped right in there and was a supporter of this student. And to me, that spoke volumes about just the level of comfort that kids have in a online conversation and how wonderful it is that we have the opportunity to support them in this as well. Holly, I agree with you. The kids were teachers, and they just thrived in this environment. It was one of those things where you just want to go yank in an assistant principal and just say, come see this, come watch this, because it was learning that was unfolding as it was happening, and yet we were really celebrating this opportunity as well. So one of the things that we did in the blogs is we established some guidelines. And this first one, basically, actually, you can read these for yourself. The teacher and I just sat down and we brainstormed. What did we want these guidelines to look like in language that the kids would understand? And again, this is secondary, and these were sophomores. So that kind of gives you that feel for these. These could easily be tweaked for younger students, and I have some examples coming up. The one thing that was hugely important to us was the reminder that this was a public space. So I could go get one of the assistant principals. Our resource officer could come and read some of these, just if somebody felt, uncomfortable with someone's post. But that last one, the encouraging them to provide links to resources, that didn't happen as much. So the embedded, according to Time Magazine, those kinds of things happened. But we're excited to see where this takes us next. We know where there are some areas for us for growth. So this was Bill Ferreter again, and this was the person who did the T-chart. But these were his suggestions, these were his tips, and I thought I would just make them a little more accessible to you. But the reminding them to post, they didn't have any trouble with this. And I think it's because they're that kind of a student that they're used to that social media, that online learning. But the one that I liked, and I'm going to try to jump into this a little bit more, is that promoting entries with parents and colleagues. I think that risk-taking, just showing the students and their parents, oh gosh, look how cool this is. We've got this great environment that the kids are into, I think is a real benefit to them to promote this. So yeah, thanks, Angie. It is a public space, and that is an authentic audience, and I think that for them, they thrived in it. We didn't really need to teach them how to blog, but we needed to talk with them about that etiquette piece and that etiquette as connected to learning. That was where we found the initial modeling was super helpful. So I wanted to include, did I skip a slide? No. I wanted to include some resources for you, especially if you're in elementary, because I felt like I wanted you to walk away with some good resources. KidBlog it's free. It has really everything you needed if you're outside of Jeffco. They have all the privacy options, the management, you can moderate the posts, they have the alignment to Common Core, they have kids can log in with a Google login, you can have different unlimited classes and sections. The YouTube video is awesome for support. EduBlogger, what they have on this hyperlink, and actually you can get there anyway just by typing in Google search for EduBlogger. This is a link to a compilation, excuse me, of blogs by different grade levels and even different countries. So I thought that was kind of a great resource for you for today, just so that you could see just how it's being used in different schools in different places. One of my friends, I recruited some elementary feedback, but one of my friends put in, she teaches at an elementary school in Jeffco, she used something called a comment sandwich, and I just thought this was so great, where when they're commenting in a blog that they have that positive comment, some constructive feedback, and positive comment. And I thought that jumping in with that second bullet, making your comment sandwich thick and tasty, lots of meaningful meeting thoughts that relate directly to the content of the post to keep the blogger satisfied. I thought that was a great visual. And I thought, you know, that could be tweaked for any grade level. It really could. So I also wanted to just give you a little bit of feedback on rubrics as far as what I've seen for rubrics, because this is one of the things that I'm going to beef up a little bit in this next blogging or online conversation with the teachers. One of the articles that I gave you a hyperlink to earlier that was on rubrics, they had categories that were listed on the left. I think some of them might be a little overlapping, the underdeveloped and limited. I'm not really sure how that's differentiated, so that would be one I would explore. And then I know that I've seen categories, such things as the ideas and content, post frequency, quality, and then the voice that's used. One of the blogs talked a little bit about their accuracy of conventions and use of enhancement, and I'm not really sure if that meant like their citations, graphics that they included in their blog. But if you think about it, there were as many blog posts that said, or research that said we don't grade blogs, but the kids really wanted to be graded. And a lot of the research that I found said that that's really what causes the kids to post. Part of it is the grade itself. So I'm just thinking about these categories as I start to look at rubrics for this next go around with blogging. This is the first blush, if you will, of the rubric that we used with our students this last year. And the teachers wanted to put the standard in there, but then they just really wanted to just evaluate their comments to each one of the questions, total replies, and then you can see where the point scale goes. They were focused and they had evidence. And then they replied to both that they were required to and that they were thoughtful. So that was the first time through, and I was thrilled. I was thrilled that they wanted to try this deeper level of conversation with their students. They wanted to work on this higher level of thinking. And so those are the kinds of things that I'm going to work with them on as we revise this rubric. And that was one of the things that I told them was one of my goals this time around, this coming spring. Questions at this point, please, again, feel free to add any questions that you might have. I'm going to talk just a little bit about using a discussion board in a learning management system. I always include links like this for teachers as they're trying out, just to try the discussion feature for their classes. There's some really great support videos that were out there for Schoology. And when I used Schoology myself, I used the discussion feature with all the freshmen. The online orientation that the students did was in Schoology for the freshmen. And we had discussion. They got points, they had due dates. The kids did great with it, and I think that's part and parcel to the fact that our students are part of this online social media learning as well. They don't struggle with this. Appropriateness, yes, but the adults haven't used this as much, and I'm pretty sure that this next year that's going to even be less. So this is just a quick screenshot of the discussion board feature. And basically I had multiple teachers who used this discussion board feature within the online orientation. And you can see that this was for 9th graders. It went 5 weeks, and it was through their study hall. And each teacher who facilitated this had a group of about, I want to say, 50 students. And they facilitated the use of the discussion board. There was always a question. And it was one of those things where the kids loved the resources that I gave them to talk about these things. And they were not as good at this. That's why I had teacher trackers, if you will, monitor those little individual discussion boards versus me doing the whole thing. It was way too much. What I did like about it was that it was kind of double dipping. The teacher trackers learned about Schoology. They also learned about online discussion, and then the teachers were willing to, and that's how it kind of started growing. The teachers wanted to start including online discussion in a safe environment. And again, Schoology is obviously supported through the district. So this was one of those things that the teachers were willing to try because the environment was so safe. One of the Spanish teachers, who you'll see in just a little bit, her stuff that she got started with, she jumped right into Schoology with her Spanish 3 and 4 students this last year. And you'll see some examples of their work using the discussion feature as well. Questions, again, feel free to jump into the chat. Sometimes it's just, there's a lot to take in, but I really want to honor the fact that for some of you, you might be wondering some things about some of the things that I've brought up as far as using a learning management system with students, a little bit about maybe Google Blogger, some of the assignments, or some thinking about some of the teachers after they use this. So feel free to jump in to the chat. Anybody, I guess we kind of addressed this in the beginning, your experiences with the discussion board and a learning management system, because we did, all of us have come from some different places. So Holly, I'm sorry, I don't know more about this, but Schoology was added toward the end of your time. Okay, no, Schoology is a lot like Blackboard. Schoology allows the students in the course to actually have a discussion, the discussion feature. And if we go back to here, you can see on this slide the materials. I can add a discussion, and so I can put a question in. So Holly, with your students, if you were using this discussion board feature, it's much like the learning management system that we had in the graduate school program, where the kids can have a discussion and respond to each other. So those posts and like that. But this is actually just a place where courses are embedded. through the district, or teachers can create their own courses, or teachers can just use the features of Schoology, such as just a discussion, to add to the classroom learning. There's a grade book. Things can be graded in there. Attendance can be taken. The kids can access and join any sort of course that's set up by the district or by the teachers. Credit recovery happens in Schoology. So it's just an online learning platform, and it's much like the one that we had. Hopefully that gives you just a little bit better of a picture. Yeah, our Schoology is within Jeffco, and it is very safe. Yes, you're exactly right. Thanks for asking that question. And again, questions along the way, please feel free to jump in. And I'm now figuring out the notification of, oh, someone's made a comment. I don't always have to just go check it. So I love, this is probably one of my favorite quotes that I had found on this. But this was a teacher who in the teacher's tips section was talking about starting small. Because these posts are online well before class meets, I'm able to skim them for recurring themes or concerns, which I often use as beginning points for class discussion. What a great way to use online conversation. And then in this way, the blogs have been invaluable in preparing me to meet my students at the outer edges of their understanding of the material. You know, just helping to make sense of content for kids, that just-in-time teaching, that blogging. I mean, I thought that was just brilliant. And what a great way to promote blogging with teachers, online conversations with teachers, is it creates an opportunity for sense-making for their kids and gives them that next step of where they're going to go based on the recurring themes or concerns. I love this, and I was really impressed at this way of looking at blogs and online conversation with kids. So here's a little bit of the feedback. These are some quotes from kids, from teachers who have experienced online conversation, some of them for the very first time. This is Elizabeth. She's the biology teacher that used this. And what I liked about Elizabeth's comment is, again, that academic, digital, virtual conversation. We know that we're preparing students for post-secondary learning, for jobs that may not even exist right yet. And so what I liked is that Elizabeth was thoughtful in the way that she was thinking about just that academic conversation. Kendra teaches the anatomy physiology, and again, I liked the fact that she was talking about giving her kids the opportunity to voice their thinking and support it with evidence and supporting that depth of knowledge. And these are the things that I think parents want to hear. So what are you doing with my students? What a great opportunity to share and promote this. So with online discussions and the learning management system of Schoology, Julie Dill, she was a teacher tracker. Her very first exposure to discussion boards was through tracking students as well. And this was what she liked about this. She thought that it was that casual and engaging opportunity, that it was ongoing conversation and discussion for the students as well. And I'll give you time to you can obviously read through some of these on your own, but she teaches Spanish 3 and 4, and she actually decided when she was a teacher tracker to move even further with this and have the students do some thinking around what they had learned, as far as it says in the second bullet. The other way I use this is for their interactions assignment. The students have to spend an hour listening, reading, speaking outside of class in Spanish. So she gives them all sorts of opportunities, and then they log their time in the Schoology discussion board. And then their replies and comments are to each other, which is building that community. And you'll see by some of their comments I highlighted, they exceed her expectations. They do really step out of the box, and you'll see that as well. And then that inspiration for each other, because they are very good at inspiring each other. I was just in that class the other day. It's pretty fun. So these were some other comments that she made. Easier to grade. Everybody can see your entry. The quality of work is higher. I think that just kind of ramps it up a little bit. I think the last comment that she makes, it's tough to get them to post early enough in the week to allow others to comment. I mean, we find that as adults when we're doing online learning. It's, you know, sometimes we wait. It's the reality of our life, and it's no different from our students. So these are some of the kids' comments, which I think are pretty interesting. The first one made me laugh because this student really had horrible handwriting. I just did this as a ticket out the door in this Spanish 4 class 2 weeks ago. And so I really did struggle reading her handwriting. But I thought, I want to give you a minute just to read. These are the benefits that the students saw from online conversation. For those visual learners, bullet number 3 really does make a lot of sense. I took Spanish for 4 years in high school, and I've been to Ecuador and used my Spanish, and Mexico and used my Spanish. And boy, just seeing it's very helpful. But this next slide I thought was pretty funny because they do have opinions, and these were just 2, but I think they make some good points. Take a minute and read these as well. Just like the teachers, sometimes the technology doesn't make sense to the kids. And so, you know, we have to be really thoughtful as we put out online options for conversation that we do explain and give kids resources. And then we've all felt that annoyance factor of, oh my gosh, I still have to reply to 2 people. So, I mean, just the honesty that the kids gave in these comments, I think was pretty good. So as the teacher librarian, when I knew that the teachers wanted to do these assignments using online conversation, I just jumped in. These teachers wanted to start this as a level of differentiation. Excuse me. And they also wanted to add this to their rubric as well. So my role was really to jump right in. This is an elementary example. I'm going to make sure I didn't just skip a slide. Yeah. Oops, sorry. There we go. So this is a teacher librarian who's at an elementary school. And for crying out loud, get off there. Okay. Oh my gosh, sorry, I'm going to use a mouse. So my friend Shannon is a teacher librarian, and she shared a little bit about her 3rd grade teachers and the work that they do with blogging and focusing on writing. And basically what she did was, when they introduced it to the students, they started looking at different blogs. We talked about that even at secondary. But then what's really cool is she said that they created a circle map with some of the norms just to define how blogging was going to be used for learning. The students then went to paper pencil, which I thought was genius. Didn't even think of that. And then just about that sticky note. Then they went on to sticky notes with their paper blog and used that, the sticky notes. The teacher did some elevating of little stickers, which had different meanings, which I thought was great for those visual cues for kids. And then they practiced. And again, she said they just go literally throughout the whole content area. They're on different topics, and they're blogging as well. So Shannon gave me also some great feedback as far as, gosh, do not know what's going on with this. Shannon gave me some great feedback as far as just the benefits of graduating from the paper to Schoology, but that is where they now blog. The kids kind of earned their opportunity to blog in the real world, if you will, on Schoology digitally. And what I really liked too was the rubric that you're going to see in just a minute was school created. Shannon said you could definitely share this, but they adjust it as they go in the different content areas. So this is the rubric that they used, and I'm not real familiar with TOPS, but I'm going to learn a little bit more about it. But basically with the students, what they did is this is the rubric that they shared with the kids, that these were the expectations, these were the goals, and this was a great example, I think, that could be transferred easily to another grade level as far as secondary or older students as well. Again, questions, things you're thinking of, please don't hesitate to jump in to the chat. So I kind of tried to differentiate between the co-planning and the co-teaching. What I did on the left, setting up the blogger, adding the teacher selected content, modeling for the students, supporting them with the tool, and talking about that online etiquette, where the classroom teacher had these other bullets that she wanted to focus on as well. I didn't have the time, obviously, to monitor the blog and the grading component, but again, that rubric, that number 4 bullet, is where we're going to focus a little bit more this next time. So I'm just wondering in the chat if you would just take a minute and share a connection that you had from today, because I'd really like to get a feel for something that resonated with you, something that you think might be useful as far as a walk away from today's section, something that you thought, oh my gosh, I might like to try this. I'm just going to give you a minute or two to think about just a connection that you've had today. I know for me, thinking about these teachers trying something for the very first time, they wanted a lot of support. So I didn't really know what that looked like except to just work side by side with them. So yeah, Angie, that meaty response sandwich, I think that really resonated with me as a secondary teacher. I thought, how can I make this work? What's a great visual? Yeah, Holly did too. Those are, I think that was good. And I think that kind of, you could even, for students who are a little bit older, flesh that out. What does that meat look like? What does the top layer, what holds it all together? What does the grade mean? Looking at the rubric, I can see fleshing that out and deepening their connection with that as well. Feel free to continue to add to that as well. But I wanted to kind of, because we're about out of time, I wanted to make sure that you knew that when you received the link to this Google presentation, there were lots of great resources for the second one, teaching teachers to use blogging. This woman was amazing. She's an elementary school teacher, classroom teacher, and her resources were huge. Her resource list was huge. Her students were the ones that created the video about kids talking about what they were learning. And then EduBlogs has tons of general blogging resources available to you as well. Here's a couple of links to online etiquette. The first one is a little more secondary, the Common Sense Media. I love their resources. This one was geared a little bit more toward the younger students as well. And then I've also put my contact information. You're welcome to, if you need more clarification, get me that information. One of my personal blogs that I love is The Fishbowl, Carl Fish. He is very good at making sense of not only digital tools, but of just our world as teachers in support of technology. So yes, Angie, Kid Blog is appropriate for older kids. It definitely is, and it's free as well. Hopefully the resources, Holly and Angie, Yulia, that you found will walk you through just some more support as well. And again, like I said, I'm that person who jumps in and says, I'll try this. And I really liked the first initial experience, and the teachers and the students did too. So I'm excited to share with you what also comes about round two, if you will. I'm sure I'll put out blogging revisited or something, because I really did feel like the resources will only grow. And yes, Holly, the rubric support, it's something that's evolving, I think, as we are faced with more concerns for online safety for our students, and what good online conversations look like. They're just so used to that social media component, and to redirect and help kids to jump into that blogging for educational purposes is really a challenge for us. So something that we're looking at all the time. Any other questions, please feel free to use the email to please let me know what else I can do. And thanks so much for attending today. I'm looking forward to supporting you in future webinars. Other suggestions that you might have, you bet, just let me know. And you're welcome, Angie. It's fun to help each other to get the resources that we need. I know, Holly, sometimes when you don't have that classroom, and I stayed home for 7 years, you're just itching to get back, and you'll figure out ways to just stay connected. And even if you're building your resource bank, what a great way to use those few minutes that you do have. So thank you, everyone, and we'll make sure that you get the links to this Google presentation and that you can access the resources as well. Thank you.